Welcome, welcome to our deep sea reef chat, all about exploring the deep sea. Thank you to everyone who made it to this reef chat. If you did not make it, that's okay. We will be posting a recording with all the links. I am Frida from Moco Art Studio, and we have also Mr. John Lutz from SOA and our two wonderful speakers, Mr. Kyle and Miss Lee. Mr. Kyle, the floor is yours.
Well, hello everyone. Yes, my name is Kyle Foster. I am studying deep sea biology, my master's at the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine in Trinidad. And today we are here to talk about exploration in the deep sea. So I'll be going through the science side of things, and then afterwards Lee will follow with how art is incorporated into our communications of deep sea exploration. So I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully there are no issues there. You can let me know if you can see. Yeah, cool. Okay, so it's just a quick presentation. So many of you might be wondering what exactly the deep sea even is. So it's characterized as waters that are 200 meters and deeper. It's extremely dark, really cold, and the pressures there can basically crush you. So, like the average human being. So, it's always funny when I tell people that I study the deep sea, and they ask, "Oh, so you dive?" And I'm like, well, yes, I do dive, but they're two separate things, basically. Like, no human being really can go down there without, I guess, the use of equipment, which we'll be talking about now. So I thought it would be interesting to go through the types of technologies that were deployed throughout history, from the 1800s to basically where we are now. So this first photo that you're seeing here is of the HMS Challenger. So this would have been the first expedition to really systematically explore the deep sea and its life. So the technologies that they would have used, very simple, dredges and trawls. And these are basically like nets that are weighted and dropped down to the seafloor. And as the ship moves, they're dragged behind the ship, and they move across the seafloor, basically picking up anything that can be caught in these nets. So sediments, marine organisms, and then it's all brought back up and sorted through by the scientists or the crew on board, just to see what they can find. So the HMS Challenger would have collected and done dredges and trawls up to 4,800 meters deep. So this is really how marine biologists would have gathered information and studied life on the deep sea prior to 1934. So this is where we would have had a human-occupied vehicle. So the two men that you're seeing right here on the left is William Beebe. I hope I'm pronouncing his surname correctly. And then on the right, we have Otis Barton. So what is in the middle there is known as the bathysphere. So this is a 5,000-pound cast iron device, basically, which is less than 5 feet in diameter. It still managed to fit two fully grown men in there, and I'm not gonna lie, I admire their bravery. Going down there and just what that is. I don't think I could have done it, but they really set the tone for future deep sea exploration. And if it wasn't them, who was going to do it? So they would have dropped down to about 923 meters around the ports. That circle there, basically a window. They would have been baited to attract different organisms so they could see, what really exists within the area. So this is, I guess, a really non-invasive way of deep sea exploration compared to what would have been done previously. So yeah, and then a little bit further into the future, this is around 1977, the Angus would have, well, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, they would have discovered these features, these deep sea features called hydrothermal vents. And prior to this, the deep sea was really regarded as a barren and lifeless environment. The rhetoric really was like during the 1800s that nothing really, there was no life really that existed below like 500 meters. So the few expeditions that would have taken place before this, and right here, right now, would have been like slowly dispelling that notion that there is no life in the deep sea. And this particular expedition in 1977 would have really been, I guess, the catalyst of us really understanding that the deep sea is like diverse and there is life that exists at like these really deep depths. So they discovered hydrothermal vents, which are essentially, how do I describe this? So what they look like is like smoke coming out of like these chimneys, basically. And what's coming out is actually like chemicals, so sulfides and various other things that organisms can utilize. They utilize these chemicals to then make energy. And that's how they survive in the dark without sunlight. So much like how there is photosynthesis up on the surface, these organisms use the chemicals that are being emitted from these vents to then make their own energy. So that was a really a big event, basically, a good milestone when it comes to deep sea exploration. And as we come to the modern day, we have, much more sophisticated technologies that we can use to explore the deep sea. So this here is a photo of the Falcor 2, used by the Schmidt Ocean Institute, which I guess Lee can talk a little bit more about later. So these are equipped with various instruments such as multi-beam echo sounders. Right here in the corner, I have a picture of a remotely operated vehicle. So essentially, it is remotely controlled. You drop it down, it can go down to however deep. You get video of what life exists on the seafloor. You can also collect various samples with it has like two arms at the front there, you can see. So those are used to like pick up whatever they can hold and bring it back to the surface so that we can then study what life exists there. So we have the non-invasive option of getting video, but then you can also collect some samples to bring up to study. So I also wanted to show, of course, you can't talk about the deep sea without showing some deep sea life. So we would have had a similar vessel come to Barbados in 2012, the RV Atlantis, also the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. So they would have studied some mud volcanoes, another chemosynthetic environment, much like hydrothermal vents, around Barbados. Yeah, so we've got like a chimera here in the top left, some really old deep sea coral, Asian deep sea coral, there in the middle in the yellow. And yeah, we're really just showing how varied the deep sea is compared to, what people thought it was before. So I think Lee will talk also about multi-beam echo sounders, but they essentially use sound. They echo it down to so much like how a bat uses echolocation to get like a picture of the objects that exist within its environment. This is kind of the same thing on a much larger level. So you can see basically like on land how we have mountains and canyons, so does the seafloor. So this is able to like give us a good picture of what features exist within the deep sea. And from then we can infer what types of life might exist. Or we can say this is an area of interest. We can drop the remotely operated vehicle here. We can get some footage of what organisms exist within the area. So now that I have gone through all of these years of exploration that we've basically had. I don't know if Lee or Frida wants to take a guess as to how much we've actually visually seen of our deep sea, like percentage-wise, globally.
I think it's less
Oh.
than 20, no?
Yeah.
Definitely less than 20, yeah. Lee, you want to give a guess?
I'd say around 10 to 15%.
Okay, well, good guesses, but it's actually 0.001% that we've visually seen of the deep sea. I think that always blows my mind. So this study would have come out earlier this year by Katie Croft-Bell and others. So essentially, all that we've seen of the deep sea so far, area-wise, is the size of the US's smallest state, Rhode Island. So yeah, that was crazy to me. And you might ask yourself, why? Why is it that we've seen so little after all of these years of exploration, basically? So the ability to research the deep sea really lies in the hands of very few countries that can actually afford it, because deep sea exploration is very expensive. So small and developing states like Barbados really don't have the fiscal space to be able to get research vessels and remotely operated vehicles and stuff to carry out exploration on our deep sea. Barbados, for instance, we have a very large ocean space. It's more than 400 times our land space, and 99.8% of that area is deep sea. So, and we've not seen much of it really. Aside from the video that I was shown a few slides back, that's really the only publicly available images that we have of our deep sea. So that means that most of the ocean globally has really gone unstudied, basically, because many countries don't have the capacity to carry out such research. But thankfully, we've had, with the innovation and advent of new technologies, low-cost technologies that can assist smaller islands and countries with deep-sea research. So on the left here, I have an image of a baited remote underwater video system. Well, this one is in shallow water, but there are also deep water ones. So these have bait bags that would attract whatever organisms are within the area. The camera is there positioned perfectly to capture whatever species come in front of it. And you can do very rapid, low-cost species assessments using such technologies. And on the right, there's a Zora drift camera, which essentially is dropped off of a small vessel. It trails behind, and it's taking video as it moves along. So you can see already, these are just bare bone stuff compared to a remotely operated vehicle, but it gets the job done, basically. So these types of technologies have been employed to really try to bridge the gaps that exists in deep sea knowledge globally. And while they might still be a little bit on the expensive side, it's all about building that capacity for these smaller countries and islands to be able to conduct deep sea research. So I'll just hand over to Lee now. I don't want to take up all of the time. But yeah, thanks for listening. And I shall unshare my screen.
Thanks, Carl. That was great. And yeah, it was good to see a shot of the Palcor. I have some very fond memories of them.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. And let's see how we go. Why are you making stuff? And to go into my slideshow. So, it's great to be speaking with everybody. And as Carl mentioned, I know the Falcor too. I spent a month on it in 2021. And it was a really amazing thing to be able to do, because we were in Brisbane, heading out for a month into the Coral Sea, and we were mapping there. So because I was the artist at sea in their Schmidt Ocean Institute program, I had free rein to kind of do whatever I wanted to do, but I was really unsure what manifestations that would take. And so one of the first things I did was to start to create a mechanical map of it, the journey. So as the ship moved from side to side, and all of that ebbing and flowing, I was able to retain the memory of the journey that we were going to do over a month period of time. So every 12 hours, I would move the piece of paper on. And so you would get this continuous pencil markings. I did change the colour when we reached different things, and you can see by the big black splodge, that was a storm because I changed to charcoal. But we only had one storm. I was a bit disappointed about that. I would have liked more activity. But I was also interested in the way the science was performed and trying to create manifestations about that. And so I did a series of pinhole images of the physical nature of the scientific work, exploring movement, exploring time. And I also had an intention of continuing on with a project that I do called From the Bow. So every time I'm on a vessel, and this started in 2014, around 6 a.m. in the morning, I'd get up, I'd sit at the front of the ship, and I would only draw specifically what was in front of the vessel. So that was a bit of a problem when I realised that I would actually not see anything above the waterline for the next month, because we were just travelling along, mapping everything that was underneath. So I created a collaboration with one of the scientists on board, Elisa Johnson. And as she worked on the computer and generated representations of the data, I used to go down there every morning and get the specific timeline and pick up and draw what we saw with the multi-beam sonar. So what the sonar was mapping, these landscapes, we have no idea what they look like. I would do my own artist interpretations. So from this process, I was creating a map that was interested in not the whole landscape, because some of these areas had been mapped by a previous journey of the Falkor to just in the December. I was there in the February. But what I was interested in was how our specific journey and how the line that we took as we were going through the ocean, what that specifically looked like. So I had an exhibition on this, and Del Walker wrote a comment in it that about sonar and what the multi-beam process is. And so that sonar infers an exact process, but the truth is that water it distorts visually, and the readings are affected by not just weather, but temperature, pressure, and salinity. And so on board, I was creating my own visualizations of what data that they were collecting. And I was looking at them sideways, I was extrapolating them, I was shifting them, because the reality of when you look at it, even though the distances were between, water surface and 4 kilometres, it was quite a flat map. So I was kind of shifting it to have a different understanding of what our journey really looked like as we were going over these different spaces. And so I shifted from that in drawing to a painting of the aerial view of how we were mapping where we were coming. So in the bottom left corner, you've got, that's where we left Brisbane. And then you had this extrapolation by me of looking at the map, how our journey zigzagged around the ocean and what large spaces that we eventually mapped. And so we were part of the project that's called 30 by 30, and they're trying to map 30% of the ocean by 2030. Don't think, given that we're only at 0.0001%, we're on schedule. But it's, it's a journey, and at least people are doing it. And I mean, that's really important given the future of, what's going on and the course that certain corporations want to take in the ocean. But we won't go there. That was in the previous talk. But my idea of how the mapping of the ocean floor took on a really different journey. So this is part of our journey. So I did a 20-minute video with sound from a wonderful artist called Thomas Speyer, and we created, between Alicia Johnson and I, we created this journey of just our footprint. So you are now looking at what high tech does when it does the multi-beam sonar and bathymetry, how it visualizes it. But what you're really looking at is purely a skin. Like, this is only the skin of what we're passing. All the things that live here, all the wildlife, all the things that travel these spaces, like whales, they are just invisible in our rendition of what we're looking at when it comes to the, these maps that we're creating, which I think, it's a great thing that we're doing these visualizations. But having looked at all of this and understood this, I kind of was really interested in the idea of how the sonar got what the sonar was doing. And so for a long time, I'd been interested in text and coding. I'd been interested in the way we can represent things through this these mark makings, really. Is what they are. And I've been doing installations using different forms of text, stenciled on builder's plastic. And I was really interested in the coding that was being generated by the multi-beam sonar. And I asked for a copy of the code. I said, we've been doing all of this for a month. Like, can I just have a bit of code? And they said, it's big. And I've gone, oh, yeah, that's okay. Like, as an artist, we're like, jump in with both feet. And so they said, okay. And they gave me a little notepad file. And I was, really excited, got home, plugged the notepad file in, and I thought, yeah, I'll just print it off. And so as you know, when you do a print job, it spools into the printing mechanism. So I had about 47,648 pages of spooling. The computer said, nah, I'm just not going to do this. And so I thought, okay, I'll convert it into a PDF. And at 600 pages, the PDF froze. It was just not doing it. So I had to go back to the old-fashioned drag and drop. So I picked up 20 pages of this code. So, I mean, the amount of code they gave me was for one, I think we did like an hour journey. So I still don't know how truly big this series of codes are. But yeah, it was just amazing. So having picked up that 20 pages of code, I could finally see how amazing it was. I mean, it is like a hieroglyphic expanse of some of the things are recognizable, like ones and twos and semicolons, and some of it is things that I've never seen before. But I started to use this to translate an image of a place that we discovered while we were there. So this is it's an unknown seamount. I've named it Vite's Height. Vite was one of the technicians on board. But this particular seamount, and they're not sure it's a proper seamount because of some of its manifestations. So it's a really unusual space. This starts at 3 kilometres below sea level. This starts 300 metres below sea level. So that space that you see at the top, that's representing the 300 metres, but it goes to 3.5 kilometres at its base. So this is a massive, massive mountain. So, and I love the idea of it, because this technology is really hidden. Like we don't see any of this without the code and without the technology. And I'd just written this article called Beyond the Verbage, and I was really interested in how this code could be translated and how I could use this code to create new representations. And so I translated my actual paper using this deep sea code, which you can see on the right. And it is a new language that I've been inspired by what this code was like. So I then started to create artworks using my translation of the code. So now I've gone from using the original code in Veit's height to starting to create other works using pages of my translation. So if you start to look at how I've used my code, if you could decode it, you could actually start to read this. So you could read the language that was written on these mountains. So as an artist, like it was difficult to find scientists to work with. And I found that it was really a privilege to work with somebody like Alicia Johnson to create this new perspective about how we journey through this marine park. And the image on the right is actually one section of the journey. So at the top of the page is where we left Brisbane as we came out and into the Cato Trough and down off the continental shelf. You've got how that landscape looked, but through my translation of code. So it was a really great honour to actually spend time on the RV Falcor 2 and with the Schmidt Ocean Institute. I mean, that to me was just absolutely fantastic. And this is a final overview using all of this technology on board ship to see the actual journey leaving Brisbane and returning to Brisbane, and how our one single journey in the ocean, this took 1 month's time, is actually visualized using technology. So so this is how I've been kind of working with the way in which we can translate a visual thing. But as I said, like none of this actually speaks about what lives there, how it lives there, you know, and yeah, that's kind of where my art is. So yeah, we can stop sharing, and that's me.
Okay, you guys, time for questions, comments, concerns. If you guys want to type, I can read out your questions. I just had a quick question to start off, Kyle and Lea. Kyle, I know that you mentioned the first net that was used to explore, right? And my question was, is that similar to the one that was shown in the David Attenborough documentary? Because I know a lot of people that were not, aware of a lot of the ocean plights. That was a very impactful image. And my question was, is that sort of what happens also in the deep sea? Like, is that the way, the type of technology that it's used to maybe remove some of the specimens? And is there a way that scientists use the technology differently?
Well, I'll say it was more of a historical use. So yes, very much like what would have been seen in David Attenborough's documentary. So that would have been let's say back in the day, but I think now we've got a lot less use of like non-invasive, a more use of like non-invasive technologies to explore the deep sea. So like the dredges and trawls would have been very indiscriminate. They just dried along the seafloor, picking up just about anything it comes across. There's no one down there to control what picks it up or anything like that. But now that we have remote operated vehicles and stuff, they have actual arms that you can go down and like carefully pick up an organism or a piece of sediment or anything like that. So thankfully, I don't think that dredging and trawling is really used that much in science. Maybe I could stand to be corrected, but I don't think that's the way we explore now.
Yeah,
Like,
I was talking to Alicia Johnson. She was with the vessel. She's a geomorphologist. I don't know what that sounds such a big name. Have no true idea what it means. But she was saying they're actually still using similar things in some areas where they will just get it's like a bucket, but it's not really, and they just scrape up the side of places to get samples. So they're still using a certain amount of that kind of old school technology because up until really, really recent, we're talking only the last couple of years, have they had the technology to be able to selectively pick, but there's not enough of that technology around globally to truly see what's there. So when you've got some science vessels still going down there and just dragging up the side, I mean, you're still getting, there's still a destructive process that was happening. Well, that was in 2021. So, 4 years ago, they're still talking that this process existed, but now I'm not, yeah,
that's
there
not
would
that long
still
ago,
be
to
a
be
lot
fair.
doing it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Carl.
I know. I mean, I think you answered perfectly.
Oh, I can ask one. There's the question that continues coming up for me, and you mentioned that there's an incredibly small amount of the ocean, and especially the deep sea, that's been seen, that we have mapping of, that we have visibility into. And it seems like art's one of those ways that we can bring visibility, but I feel like the deep sea is very much a niche topic. Like people being interested in it or wanting to learn more, they've already been exposed in some way. So I'm curious, either of you, how you've seen what you've seen as successful in getting more people interested in the fields that you're both involved in that are not already there.
Very good point. I mean, in Barbados, um, we have a saying that like, all right, the sea ain't got no back door. Basically, it's a wide open space. Anything can happen. There's no control. We want nothing to do with what's beyond like the shelf, basically. Um, so you wouldn't really find many people like hearing about the deep sea, like out of sight, out of mind. But I find that art has been very instrumental in getting people to kind of like connect with the deep sea life. We would have had with SOA Caribbean some like deep sea art competitions, which then would have been on display, like the winners would have had their art put on display. And we had people that were like genuinely interested, asking questions about like deep sea life and stuff. So I think that was a really good way to get people to connect with something that is they don't typically think about every day.
Yeah, it's certainly been a journey. Like people would look at my art, and certainly, as you can see by my background, I've got by its height the original drawing with the text, and they're going, "Oh, so where is that?" And I'm going like, "It's 300 meters below sea level," and so it's really a hard. In a lot of ways, it's a hard sell because we are, as a species, if we can't see it, touch it, feel it, hear it, then we don't care about it. And trying to manifest it in ways that people start to care has always been a problem in anywhere that you can't see. And certainly, by using sounds that of the whale in that, the journey, it allows people to go, oh, hang on a minute. Oh, that's right. This is where these creatures live. And so for me, trying to get them to connect that the deep sea is not just empty is probably been the hardest thing to get people to understand. I mean, scientists understand it, but everybody else, it's kind of like, well, it's too far, and we don't know. And I think I think the biggest thing we have to get people to do is change their vision as to just because we can't see it doesn't mean we shouldn't care about it. I mean, just because we can't see the Amazon when we walk out the front door doesn't mean we shouldn't care about the Amazon. And so I think that that's part of how we've got to change the mindset of people when it comes to the deep sea. And I know there's a lot of panic around by so many people over a few people's greed at the moment that's going on with what the plans are for the deep sea. I think we have to go back to the fundamentals of we have to say things just because we can't see them doesn't make them irrelevant. And doing work like this, speaking to people through art. And so, they're drawn in by the pretty picture of a landscape, and then they start to really understand what it's about. I think is one way to get them to truly connect to these places.
Lee, I liked how you likened like deep sea ecosystems to, let's say, the Amazon, for instance. Like these ecosystems have so many services that you just don't like. It's yeah, you can't see it, so you don't know exactly how it affects you. So I think education is another thing. Letting people know that ecosystems such as like mud volcanoes, so which I talked about earlier with where the videos were from Barbados's waters, those have organisms that absorb the methane that's being emitted from these mud volcanoes, so that it's not like emitted into the atmosphere. And methane is another gas that contributes to climate change. So I think it's about helping people to understand how these things help us in like our everyday lives. That's probably one of the biggest hurdles and I guess our mission in this.
Yeah, and I mean, when they've only just discovered why they kept having anomalies in readings when they got into the deep sea about finding more oxygen, and now they've kind of understood that, oh, these nodules actually create oxygen down in the deep sea. So it starts to really question if we start taking out what creates atmosphere in a space that we don't understand and we don't know what's going on down there, then how we still have no idea what serious ramifications the removal of any more of these nodules is going to have. I know they did a test patch 30 years ago in the ocean. They took, I think it was I'm guessing, I'm sorry, I'm trying to vaguely remember it was like a 30-kilometre square patch. They removed all the nodules, and they've been going back every 10 years or less to see what's happened to this single patch in the ocean that they've already removed. Nothing has happened. It's absolutely bare. Nothing has moved in. There's no life there. It's a barren wasteland. So if it's a barren wasteland after 30 years of removal, and these nodules are so vital to oxygen levels in these, and we still don't understand it because we're not living down there. It doesn't affect us because it doesn't affect this oxygen, but we don't know that. Overall, we don't know how, those two different levels of oxygen, one in the deep sea and one in our atmosphere, whether they connect at all. And I'm sure that there's probably some that they do. But yeah, it's quite scary, the future of what the oceans are looking at and what we're looking at that we don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's like we're operating on a time scale that for us seems like 100 years a really long time, But in the deep sea, when there's not light actually measuring time in that way, it's unrelatable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to say it, John. I mean, it really is robbing time.
We have a question in the chat, you guys. It says, which type of modern technology we have to implement for exploring the deep sea?
Right. Well, I guess there's like the traditional types of modern technology. So having, you know, a massive research vessel like what the Schmidt Ocean Institute has, which would be, you know, outfitted with all these different types of technologies. So like multi-beam echo sounders, which Lee would have used to generate the beautiful images that she has. And they also have remotely operated vehicles that are able to dive down thousands of meters to get video of what organisms exist down there. But then there's also the low-cost technologies that are being implemented, literally just like drop cameras that can be sent down for a period of time. Then they either have a mechanism that allows them to come back up to the surface after a few hours of collecting imagery, and then it's collected, or you just basically like bring it back up by a winch. And these low-cost technologies can be deployed off of like a small fishing vessel, for instance. So we now have like a whole range of things that can be employed to explore a deep sea.
I know that when I was on with the Schmidt Ocean, you know, because we were just doing mapping on this particular journey, they weren't using their ROVs. But the new Falcor 2, you know, it's almost twice as big as the Falcor that I was on. And, you know, with its ROVs, and the interesting thing about that is that they can take pressure samples. So like, you know, when you're 3 kilometers below the sea, when you take something from that area to bring it up to atmosphere where we are, it's a really big thing. I mean, it's a really traumatic thing for the sea life that lives down there. You know, I suppose you could kind of, I was at a conference and we went to the fish markets and we're looking at the different fish. And just to give you an idea of the atmosphere, and I'm looking at these fish and I was commenting to the guy, I said, oh, so what's that in its mouth? I said, is that its tongue? And he said, oh, no, that's the swim bladder. And, you know, this is a deep sea fish, and they have pulled this fish up so quickly out of the deep sea that its swim bladder, which maintains its buoyancy, had actually ruptured out of its mouth. And you're thinking, what a horrific way to die. You know, this is just gobsmacking that we treat these species, that anything that lives in the ocean, we treat them with such disrespect. And I think it's really great that a lot of the samples now are being taken and maintained the pressure and trying to, you know, I mean, that is those big bags that scraped along the bottom. I mean, everything in that would have been distorted in some way because of the pressure changes between the way it was down where it lived to up the top. And, you know, so it was kind of traumatic for me to realize what these poor deep sea creatures go through just so we can have, you know, fish and chips. And it's something that I think that it also needs to be explored.
Yeah, I a few years ago I was still teaching and the blobfish image came out. I don't know if you guys remember that, and everybody was like, "Look at the blobfish," and I had to read a little bit into it just to discover that that's not what a real blobfish looks like. It's because of the change in pressure, and it got really popular with my students, right? And they were buying stickers and they were like plushies, and they're just like, "It's so cute," and it was a conversation that we have to have of, that's not what the real fish looks like, just for you to know. That's just what happens when, you know, it's brought up to surface really quick. And yeah, they were also a little bit traumatized by that. They were like, why would they do that to the fish? And we're like, well, you know, technologies and the way we do things might not be the best yet, but we're working on it. You know, it's also important for science, but I guess, you know, and Kylie could probably answer this, each country also would probably like to have all the resources that they can to research everything that they can, but unfortunately not everybody has the ability to.
Yeah, for instance, yeah, Barbados. So my M.Phil would have focused on just doing like a state of knowledge assessment of Barbados's deep sea life. Um, how these samples were collected, where they've gone, etc. And I found that basically all of the samples that were collected from our deep sea were collected by countries in the north that, you know, have the resources to be able to even explore the deep sea. And the other sad thing is that, you know, all of these samples were like taken back home with them. So they weren't left here in Barbados for us to like house and have samples to study and observe, or for like people to connect with in a museum or anything like that. So yeah, if we had the capacity to be able to collect our own samples, you know, that would be amazing. But yeah, unfortunately we don't have that many opportunities to do so.
Yeah, when you're doing when research is being done like this, I assume there's a limited amount of samples that you're able to take up. So that question, or what you were just saying about they didn't leave any samples, is there a conversation about ensuring that they bring up more and then have access, or is there consideration about the ecosystem impact by taking more from those ecosystems? Or how are you even considering that balance?
So, right. So I have no idea about like quotas or anything like that. I just know that historically, um, like Barbados, I can speak for Barbados. We weren't really, let's say, consulted in like the deep sea expeditions that occurred in our waters. Right now, it's a whole lot better, in terms of us having control of what research does take place in our waters. Right now, we are in the process of a marine spatial plan, for instance. And just yesterday, we would have had really our first bathymetric survey of our ocean floor. So that would have like mapped out a portion of our seafloor. And over the next 5 years, we're hoping to get like a proper high resolution image based off of the multi-beam echo sounders that are used from this vessel, to then understand like what our deep sea looks like. I feel like I lost track of what I was going to say.
Yeah, but I also in talking about sampling, one of the things that I questioned was in looking at, you know, there's hundreds of thousands of hours of footage from the Schmidt Ocean. If you go onto their website, you can see some really amazing things. And there was one of these days that I was looking at it, and they were looking at this very long, tall, almost poppy-like plant growth. You could call it plant. I mean, but it was made of silica. Now, what we don't know, because we don't have an overall view, is we don't know if that was the only one. So if we take that particular sample out, is that the first one of that species? Is it the last one? You know, how do they determine when they're doing this sampling what they take? If they just take it because, oh, that looks really interesting, let's just take that. But but it's so sparsely populated that you don't know if it is the final one of that species, and it could be thousands of years old. I mean, literally tens of thousands of years old. And that's also, I know in order to understand that, you have to take a sample, but it's a really kind of circular, weird point that we're at now where, you know, we're trying to understand it. We're trying to get information, but how do we determine what should be allowed to be taken?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
foraging best practice is you don't take the first mushroom that you see of each kind, just to make sure that it continue populating.
And that reminds me too of what you said of when you guys were mapping, Lee, it was just the skin, right? So it's not like, I mean, a lot of organisms travel, right? But some are set where they are, right? In the deep sea, they can't go away. But the sound mapping just does the floor. There's no way to say this little organism is right here in this part of the sound mapping. Like if we had the floor and then we had like little bits for where the organisms that can't move away, right? That's not possible at the moment, or that I know of.
Well, I think that the new Falcor 2, and I'm because that only came online, I think in early 2024. That, I believe its new mapping system has a way to determine if there's something growing on the surface. So it's getting much more technology. It's pulling a lot more together to get a better visualization map. So it's not in the ship that I was on, it was only able to track the skin. And I mean, on this kind of detailed mapping, there is a lot of other mapping that's gone on with just general freight shipping. So every time a ship goes out, they're also doing a form of very low res, low key mapping of where they're going and how they're passing. So, you know, this kind of high tech, it's now going to the next level where they're getting much more information than just skin. But I'm not sure exactly how much they're able to tell now as well, because, you know, as you said, things migrate through water columns. And that was the other thing we were doing. We were looking at water samples down to 4 kilometres below sea level. And during those water samples, there was something, 270 samples taken while we were there of water throughout the full water column, as well as we were moving along, looking for microplastics. And there were only 2 that didn't have microplastics. So we're talking 4 kilometres below sea level, you know, but that still, unless you're doing those kinds of sampling, you're not seeing it. And you have to stop the ship and drop down the CTD and do the sample and bring it back up. And, you know, so it's not a continuous sample. So there's still a lot that technology is starting to give us. And hopefully it will speed up quicker so that we can stop some of the damage before the damage begins.
No, I also just wanted to add, I kind of remembered what I was going to say now. Very quickly. So where I was going in terms of the expeditions in Barbados. So now, there is a stipulation for like local involvement in expeditions that take place in our waters. So my colleague Jaleesa, I don't know if she's still on the call, but she would have just been on the research expedition that took place with doing a bathymetric survey of Barbados's waters. And eventually we're hoping that they're also able to use the remotely operated vehicle and stuff like that. And all of the data basically that they collect belongs to Barbados. There's that agreement. So thankfully things are changing as we go forward. So yeah.
Looks like we have a question. Miriam, if that's how you pronounce your name.
Can you see, like, okay.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
No?
Oh, there you are.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and I want to thank all the speakers for their contributions. And first of all, my name is Mariam Khaldoun, and I'm from Morocco. I'm a third-year business student in Morocco, and I'm a very passionate young girl. I'm very passionate about ocean and marine conservation. And I was like particularly struck by what Miss Lea Kannar mentioned and said earlier about the mindset of if we can't see it, we don't care about it. And in this context of today's brief chat on exploring the deep sea, My question is, what the concrete approaches and operations do you believe are most effective to shift this mindset for us, this youth generation, so that people begin to reflect and to care more about the deep sea and deep sea um, cases, and even though it's hidden from our like daily view. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Miriam. I certainly see a change in, say, if you're looking at Instagram. I know Schmidt Ocean Institute are putting out short little vids of creatures that they're finding to try and draw people in to that greater question of, what's really under the ocean. And I think that that kind is one way to start the conversation and to try and get more awareness out there, is to have the conversations that Frida is doing. I think through her Moku Art Studios, you're really doing an amazing job of trying to create more awareness about what's going on and about our planet. I mean, these are like we think of our planet as terrestrial, but in fact we are more ocean than anything else. And it's just one ocean. It's not, the Pacific or the Indian or the Atlantic. It's not, we just, that's a colonial ideology that we just have to name things, put a barcode on it, stamp it and get it out there. But in fact, the ocean is just one large body of water. And so, I think that there is a movement now to try and shift the narrative to show us what these people are discovering, and all we can do is forward them on. You find places like, and I can only really talk from the fact that I've had the experience with Schmidt, but if you find other people doing having little videos or memes of these creatures that live underwater, pass them on, share them with your friends. We can only affect one person at a time, really. We can only change one mind at a time. And it's up to us as individuals to share that knowledge more, to create a tsunami of information, to create that movement where people have more interest in what's going on, but they don't get that chance or the opportunity if we don't share what we have and what we know, which I think is one of the most important things.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That was understandable. Thank you.
And also, Kyle, I think you can speak a little bit about this, but the Sustainable Ocean Alliance has chapters, right, all around the world, that if you want to like help out where you are, they have groups and of people that you can connect with. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that, just for the I'd be interested?
Right. So I'm part of Sustainable Ocean Alliance Caribbean, and there are various hubs like across the world. Not sure about Morocco. I'll have to look into that, but I'm hoping that there's at least a chapter that is nearby you. But yeah, they've been really instrumental, especially in getting like young people interested in the ocean space, getting them involved in projects, and educating people as well. So yeah, for instance, I had spoken about the deep sea art expedition. And that really generated like conversation that was held in Trinidad and in Jamaica, generating conversation among people that typically don't think about the deep sea. So there are chapters across the globe. Just have a look into it. You can see how you can get involved. And yeah, it's a really good resource, especially if you also are looking for funding to do your own ocean project. So they have various different things that they do to help young people, young ocean advocates. So yeah.
I just wonder, like Kyle, you're saying young ocean advocates, and I think that's really great. The next to really change the idea of the next generation. But I think one area that we really have to change is the older mindset, the older idea of what the
You're
ocean
not
is, that
wrong.
the ocean is there to just pillage and take what you like and,
Yeah.
have that colonial ideology. And I think that it's great to have a groundswell from the bottom, but we need to really hit those ideas at the top. Those who are organizing the funding and trying to change the mindset of that colonial thing. We see it, we take it, or we don't see it, we still take it.
Yeah, for sure. I'll add a little point there. So SOA has also been like really instrumental in getting young people into the spaces, where like decisions are being made with the older people. So for instance, I would have gone to the International Seabed Authority. This is United Nations organization that oversees and manages all of the marine mineral resources that are found on the seafloor in international waters. So SOA would have had its own delegation go to the International Seabed Authority, where we are in the same spaces as these people. We're able to have conversations with them and do what we can to essentially get them to care about sustainability and the future of young people like us. So yeah, fully agree with your point. And that is something that SOA is doing. So thank you for that.
And just to mention really quick, if this is something that you guys are interested in, there's a way for you to become like part of the SOA community, and there's not a chapter in there. I believe that there's a way for you to like suggest that you want to create a chapter and get involved. So if you do not see a hub, I believe there is a way for you to say, hey, I'm interested in doing this work and I want to start my own hub. And there's a structure to help you guys do that as well.
Yeah, definitely. So you can be the pioneer.
Well, you guys, thank you so much. We went a little bit over time, but I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you to Kyle and Lee and John for joining us today on this Reef chat. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. If you missed part of it, we will have a recording and all important links on it. If you want to learn more, we always welcome you to go check out the SOA Deep Sea Mining Academy to get a little bit more into it. And check back with us. We will have a Reef chat every month. I believe the next one is on bioluminescence, which is a very hot topic. So I hope to see everybody there, and check out the previous recordings too if you missed those. At this point, have a good day, you guys, from wherever you are in the world.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.